The United States of America, 1950. The Cold War was in its infancy, and tensions between the United States and communist nations were high. Mass hysteria and suspicions consumed the U.S. Anti-communist propaganda controlled mass opinion, and communist spies seemed to be popping up around every corner. The breaking point was on February 9, 1950, when Senator Joseph McCarthy came out with a list containing the names of 205 alleged communists, sending the U.S. population into a downward tailspin of panic and hysteria that tugged at the very foundation of our country. Throughout history, the United States government has for the most part fulfilled its responsibility of ensuring that its citizens' human rights are protected to the fullest extent possible. That being said, the U.S. government on occasion has failed its citizens by letting their rights be infringed upon unlawfully. Mccarthyism is just one scenario in which the U.S. government failed to protect its citizens' rights, leading to one of the greatest embarrassments of this nation's history. Mccarthyism violated a variety of rights, including the right to free speech, the right to remain silent, and the right to a fair and speedy trial, all of which can be found in the Bill of Rights, a vital part of the Constitution. While the U.S. government successfully fulfilled its responsibility to prevent communism from infiltrating the U.S. during the Mccarthyism era, it did so at the cost of the rights of its citizens. Mccarthyism thrived off the hysteria caused by the fear of communist subversion in the early 1950s. Several key events developed the nationwide fear of communist penetration into the U.S. The first of these was the Alger Hiss conspiracy. Alger Hiss, a high-ranking member of the State Department, was accused of passing classified documents to the Soviet Union. This accusation was verified after Whittaker Chambers, an ex-communist agent, admitted that Hiss had given him the documents and that he still had microfilms of them. Hiss was indicted for perjury and spent 44 months in prison as a result. The communist scare didn't end at Hiss, though. In 1950, Klaus Fuchs testified that he had delivered details regarding the construction of the first Lightning, a nuclear bomb, to the Soviet Union. Two Jewish Americans, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, were later accused of espionage, and both were executed on these charges. It wasn't until years later that evidence of Julius's involvement was found. However, nothing was ever found to link Ethel to these charges. At the time, this incident and those previously mentioned were all factors in the shaping of nationally mutual anti-communist feelings and mass hysteria. In the 1950s, the hysteria caused by fear of communist infiltration had a direct influence on politics. This can be clearly seen through Mccarthyism, a vociferous campaign against alleged communists in the United States government, and other institutions carried out from 1950 to 1954 by Senator Joseph McCarthy. Senator Joseph McCarthy was one of the biggest figures in politics during much of the Cold War. After a rather unaccomplished first term as senator, McCarthy recognized that he needed to gain more political support in order to truly have a chance at winning re-election. A close friend, Edmund Walsh, suggested to McCarthy that he lead an anti-communist campaign. McCarthy, of course, took this advice a bit too far and accused well over 1,000 people of being communists, a phenomenon now known as Mccarthyism. These reckless and unjustified accusations ultimately led to the defamation of the reputations of those accused. The accused generally included State Department officials who opposed McCarthy's politics, journalists and writers who criticized McCarthy, teachers who violated the government's anti-communism curriculum, and many others who were potentially associated with communism. McCarthy and his committee viciously interrogated suspects and brutally attacked their reputation as loyal citizens. Those who refused to disclose or were unable to specify their past whereabouts and confirm their loyalty to the U.S. were further suspected of being involved with communism. One of the most famous suspects accused of being communist was Owen Lattimore, former editor of the Institute of Pacific Relations Journal, otherwise known as the IPR Journal, and United States government liaison to Chiang Kai-shek, a communist politician and military leader from China. At the time, the IPR was being heavily questioned because several individuals who worked there were suspected of being Soviet spies. Lattimore's acquaintance with Chiang Kai-shek and involvement with the IPR, combined with partial blame for the loss of China to communism, gave credit to McCarthy's accusation. These factors only aided McCarthy by making his unjustified attack on Lattimore believable and more potent. Additional evidence came from Louis Badenz, who was convicted of being an ex-communist. McCarthy commonly used evidence from Badenz to prove his accusations for many individuals. Almost all evidence from Badenz, however, was circumstantial information from questionable sources. Badenz testified that Lattimore was a fellow communist. His charges against Lattimore were never verified, but were still used to validate McCarthy's accusation. McCarthy placed Lattimore the number one person on this list of known communists, accusing him of being the top spy for the Soviet Union. Lattimore was questioned by McCarthy and his committee for 12 days. During this time, McCarthy accused Lattimore of lying when he told the committee that he had never been a communist sympathizer. Lattimore was later represented in court by Thurman Arnold, Abe Fortas, and Paul Porter, where he was found guilty on 7 counts of perjury. He was proven innocent 3 years later and freed from all his forms of punishment. But his career was completely ruined. Lattimore lost his position in government as a liaison to Chiang Kai-shek and as editor of the IPR journal. He received no further popularity from his readers, and his credibility amongst the public was destroyed. McCarthy and his committee also accused Val Lorwin, a socialist politician, of being associated with communism. Lorwin worked as a State Department official in the labor unit. While in Paris, Harold Metz testified that Lorwin was part of the Communist Party, claiming that he had seen him with a red card, a symbol for the Communist Party. Lorwin was a committed socialist, and the card was actually representative of the Socialist Party, but Lorwin was not able to prove this to the McCarthy administration. McCarthy used this evidence to verify that Lorwin was a communist sympathizer. Lorwin was then indicted for perjury before the State Department. He was cleared 2 years later after the validity of the red socialist card was verified, but by then, Lorwin's reputation was permanently damaged and he was not able to recover his career as a State Department official. McCarthy then continued his accusations by focusing on the U.S. Army, his committee first attacking Irving Perez, an Army dentist. When he was accused, Perez invoked the Fifth Amendment to protect himself. In response to this, McCarthy stated that this was the most positive proof obtainable that the witness is communist. While accusations surrounded Perez, he was promoted a major. After realizing this was a mistake, Army officials discharged Perez to help relieve the suspicion surrounding the Army. But McCarthy further attacked the Army and used Perez to support his accusation. He attacked the loyalty of the men in the U.S. Army, criticizing them for allowing Perez to be promoted while he was suspected of being associated with communism. McCarthy compared the Army's promotion of Perez to the advocating of communist sympathizers. Under intensive questioning, McCarthy demanded General Ralph Zwicker to reveal names of those who were involved in Perez's entitlement. Zwicker stated he could not, since that would be violating executive orders. McCarthy rudely disrespected Zwicker on live television, saying that Zwicker had the intelligence of a, quote, 5-year-old child. The American public was shocked when they heard the interrogation. McCarthy's treatment of Zwicker caused a lot of hostility from the public and press. Joseph Welch represented the Army in court. While Welch was questioning one of McCarthy's committee members, McCarthy tried to claim that one of Welch's law firm associates, Fred Fisher, was a member of the Communist Party organization in order to draw suspicion to Welch. McCarthy continued to try and raise suspicion of Welch, and in response, Welch exclaimed,
"You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?"
From this point on, the public no longer supported McCarthy in his defense against communism. His downfall was primarily due to his attacks on the loyalty of the men in the U.S. Army, which publicly revealed his cruel questioning tactics on television. The short-term effect of McCarthyism was the destruction of the careers and reputations of those who were accused of being involved with communism. Even after many of the accused were acquitted, almost all of them were not able to recover their careers and restore their reputation. These people were prosecuted by their own country and were never trusted for the remainder of their lives. In the long term, McCarthyism restrained individual expression and reform. It brought American progress to a screeching halt and paralyzed the nation with fear. The government for a long time after McCarthyism was viewed by the public as a controlling force that would persecute those who opposed its beliefs. The hysteria created by McCarthyism caused America to fall into a state of isolationism and even neglect their role in the global community for several years. Any challenge to American foreign policy was seen as disloyalty. The years surrounding McCarthyism were some of the darkest years of United States history. McCarthyism caused mass hysteria and the violation of a number of fundamental rights. These included the right to free speech, the right to remain silent, and the right to a fair and speedy trial. The U.S. fulfilled its responsibility of keeping communism from infiltrating the U.S. However, they did this at the expense of the rights of their citizens. The short-term impact of McCarthyism was the destruction of numerous innocent people's careers and reputations. However, the long-term impact of McCarthyism helped the government to recognize its primary responsibility, which they failed to uphold during the 1950s, the protection of human rights.